So this way we're going to do the walk, we just kind of walked through with one of the building administrators. We're going to kind of go through this passage. You'll follow me. We're going to walk up a ramp. So I'll talk a little bit here, then we'll do this journey up the ramp, and then we'll end up in this really beautiful garden space. If you've never been in, it's ridiculous, and we can see the ramps, which is a really cool feature. But I think, sorry, I got to speak up. But I think one of the interesting things you will need to look at, I mean, if you're super technically minded, I think you should think about how you might calculate these spaces in AGI. And I think if you're thinking about, if you're really design oriented, say, and you really like to think about how light can exist in a space, both from source of light, where light reflects off of. Hierarchy is a huge thing in this building. So we worked so when I did this project, I just started at Mulvey. I was in my 20s, and I worked with a lighting designer out of New York. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Office for Visual Interaction, OVI, Enrique Peringer. Did the SD work with the architect, Antoine Preduc, and then we kind of, as a lighting design group, became concept guardians, so to speak, which is a really cool process for me at that stage. I'm so happy I had this project that early in my career, because, Enrique, I know a lot about hierarchy now and how light can guide people through spaces, right? You move to the brightest point, that's another Flynn thing. And he really had a handle on that. And he also had a handle on not being afraid to take a little bit of risk with regards to indirect sources, right? Secondary sources. So you'll see entire spaces that are lit really by secondary sources. So in-grounds, this entire hallway is just lit with in-grounds, right? I mean, that worked in a lot of places. There's a lot of places where I don't think we passed our building code with lighting levels initially anywhere. That's not true, but it was a struggle. But I think in the end, what was cool about it, the contractor, everyone really worked together. And I think there's a lesson on this project that I learned, other than the idea of using secondary sources, reflected light, hierarchy, was really about the success of a project relying on every single team member, like the person constructing it, the person designing it, the people engineering it, the people supplying it. I mean, I won't kid you, at times I was afraid to get off the plane because so many people were just angry at the lighting designers and the electrical team, and we're like, you guys are putting way too much markup on it, our budget said this, you guys are pirates. I mean, in the end, sorry, Don. There was a few weeks when we weren't the best of friends. But that's the best part about a project like this, is that, there's this idea of, we all sorted out in the end, it was on budget, and we got basically what we specified. So it worked out perfectly. But there was lots of times when we just so much tension with all the groups. It's so traumatizing. You're screaming. There's so much money. It's over budget, it's late, it's a project like this is a real emotional journey. It really is, because it takes so much out of you. But in the end, it's a good lesson to learn early in your career. Like, you are not alone. It's like this story is like a 33.33%. I like to think of it: design, constructors, suppliers, right? All equally responsible for the outcome, no question. So we'll go up the ramp. This is the Garden of Reflection. This whole building is kind of built on roots. You saw when you came in, you're coming in between these roots, and Antoine Preduc, I think, the concept I may misquote, I may be saying it not entirely right, but, in my mind, it's like roots of a tree, and it comes into the museum like we're learning from our roots, and then it ends with the Tower of Hope up top, which is illuminated. It goes way up, you take that spiral staircase, and you can go up to the top, and an insane view. So do the tour, I would say, for sure. You have to. Anyways, again, with this space, you can see it was, from a lighting perspective, there was nowhere to mount lights ever. No light is mounted in a conventional way. And you just kind of look around. We have lights on top of the stairwell there, and on top of this boardroom way up here. There's everywhere, there's just lights kind of concealed in every point. So when you think of lighting calculations and things like that were just so difficult to wrap your head around. So we really struggled with that prediction of how bright things would be. And we learned a lot about this idea. Again, light comes from direct, indirect, and I think the other is just the ambient light. You know, we would have lots of conversations like, well, this in-ground is lighting the ceiling, that gets us here, but like, that's a black hole. There's gonna be light from other rooms, right? It should be fine. Like, there's a lot of conversations like that because there's no way to predict. And the coolest thing, though, I'll talk about the Alabaster Ramps. So that's all alabaster, and if you were to lay it out, inside faces, outside faces, it's 5 kilometers of alabaster long, like it would make a strip. So that also means there's 5 kilometers about, or I don't know how many linear feet of LED, 3,000 or something? Almost 4,000, exactly, of linear LED in the top of the ramp. That ramp is another great story of this like 33.33% thing. I will be the first to admit now for the first time ever that I was actually against that lighting method when it got proposed. This is lighting design. We had an architect, Antoine Predic, who really wanted a uniform light treatment, 100% uniform, was dead set. And of course, young designers were like, we gotta do what the architect wants. He wants this uniformity. We had this crazy panel system designed that was to go behind like edge-lit panels, like those Fa-Wu style edge-lit panels. But again, like, you know, as a designer, I think you kind of gotta be like water, right? You really can't be stuck on an idea because there's a whole other half of the team. Someone has to supply it. There's a budget to follow. There's a constructability aspect. There's a maintenance aspect. So this end solution was really a combined effort of all of us trying to find solutions. And in the end, Don and Lumipulse, I'll just say, I'm not supposed to say manufacturers, and the contractor, I think this is one of the approaches. And we were mocking up these flat panels, and I don't know how it happened, but you guys just like hijacked the mock-up and like threw this linear LED in the top with a ton of light, and they're like, I think it'll be fine, you know, because I know it'll be shadowy, and when you look on the inside of the ramps, you'll see the shadow of the structure, which the architect didn't want. But it just goes to show, I think, A, the collaboration, but the other thing I learned is if you put just like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of lumens, if you throw just hundreds of thousands of lumens, doesn't matter what direction, at a beautiful stone on the inside of a cavity, it's going to look cool. Like you don't need to think about the silly beams and all this stuff doesn't matter, right? The gradient, they didn't like that it delineated. I can't remember all the reasons the architect didn't like it, but it was like a mock-up hijack. Like I get a call like, that's not what we asked for. Like why are they just throwing lights? But then you're like, no, this makes, and it's just kind of this idea that you're working with the contractor, the supplier, and everybody to make something work, and that's the result, which is really just like this crazy installation. So I think we can walk around here, and then we can just anybody have any questions? That's really the end. Well, the office is interesting. It's all indirect as well. We didn't want recessed 2x2s like visible from down here. You'd imagine looking up at like 2x4 lights right now. That would kill the experience. So it's metal halide, indirect. This was 2004. So all of majority of the lights in here are actually conventional sources. And then we had these like backwing, or these indirect reflector things that were custom made. All that's custom. Yeah.
Does it get dark here after the sun sets?
Yes. I mean, when you look up, we have a bunch of, that's where these lights come in on top of the stairwells. You can't really see, there's some on top of there, they're everywhere, like there's little lights everywhere. But yeah, in the center here, it's quite dark. It's quite dark. I think the city's code enforcers just don't come in here with light meters because it's a little scary. But it's never like, because of the delineation of the step lights. We had a good conversation with the code. They measured inside the ramps, and they were like, it's not meeting code there. It was under 5-foot candles, and we just look at them like, is it lit? Like, can you appreciate the perimeter of the space you're walking in? Is it safe? And they're like, yes. And we're like, can we just move on? You know, and they did. Yeah, so that's it. Any others? Yeah. No worries.